coming, guys.
Thank you, guys. This is really nice of you.
We're going to turn house lights up.
All right. It's house lights.
Oh,
Wow.
it's so nice. Yeah, it's like a whole room. Yeah, it's in a person's home.
I know.
Yeah.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Close enough.
I don't know if mine. Okay, here we go. Well, thank you all for coming to this. My name's Abbi Jacobson. I was lucky enough to voice Katie Mitchell in the film. I hope you all loved it as much as I did. And I had the pleasure. Oh man, I can't see you all. I'm gonna angle out. Yeah. I like to see some faces.
Yeah, sure.
So I have the pleasure of talking to these three today, three of my favorite filmmakers who made this film. Mike Rianda, who co-wrote and directed the film. And of course, producers Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Okay, so, sorry guys,
Look at the preparation. That's cool.
I don't moderate often. So here we go. I'm usually just a voice. I get to just read off screen.
She was training for hours.
Yeah, I was. So you might know Mike's work before from Gravity Falls, but this is actually his first animated feature film, which is incredible. And I'm sure you're all familiar with Chris and Phil's work on fucking everything that we love. But Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the Lego Movie, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and on and on and on. I could continue all day. But yeah, I just feel lucky. One, I feel so lucky. I've told you this every single time I see you, but I feel so lucky to be in this movie and to get to be part of telling this story. And I've talked to you all a little bit about it, but I actually have no idea how this collaboration started and how you guys met and how the three of you started. Yeah.
Well, it started. I
It
sort
was
of
1969.
1969.
Parents
Oh,
met.
here we go.
No, but I had sort of started making this movie at Sony, and normally when you make a movie at a big studio, it has to have an X-Man or a Spider-Man. And we had neither. We only had my dad. And it was a movie based on my family and sort of and trying to sort of like tell a really personal story that also was sort of talking about, you know, our dependence on technology and how it's sort of like part of our family now and how it's not going away and we need to learn to live with it. And what are the things that make us human? And the studio was like, great. We've never heard of you, and we don't know what's going on. And then these two heroes swooped in and said, "This guy's cool. Make the movie. We swear it'll be good." And then they had to make that come true.
That's basically it. We were finishing up Spider-Verse, and Mike had been working very hard for a long time on this very personal project, and showed us what he'd been working on, and we felt like it was a kindred spirit. He felt like he and his co-writer Jeff Rowe felt like Phil and I from 10 years ago when we were in the very same office making our first movie, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and it was even messier than our office. And he had a manifesto about how he's going to revolutionize animation, and we're like, I love this energy and spirit, and if we can suck some of that energy, we can stay young forever.
I used to be 21 years old, and they've
At the
sucked my
beginning
life
of the
force
film,
out,
yeah.
and they're younger and I'm older.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
But he was really funny and really sweet, and he really obviously was telling a personal story and really cared about emotion, and that's very rare to find someone who can be both funny and emotional. And so, you know,
And he wanted to move the needle.
Yeah.
He wanted to make something that hadn't been made before, and that's our whole bag. And he did it miraculously.
Yeah.
With a lot of help from the crew.
I do remember, I told you this recently, he sent me an email in the beginning and there was a little manifesto.
Really?
It was about changing the game and I was like, holy shit, he's really, okay, let's do it.
I remember that was how I tried to lure Abby in. I was like, do you want to be in the greatest animated movie of all time?
Yeah.
Maybe. We're going to try. We're going to try. Can you help us, please? It'll be better if you're in it. And then she's like, okay.
And we spent 3 years holding Mike's feet to the fire and saying, like, you said you wanted to be the greatest animated movie of all time. Is this scene the greatest scene?
Right.
Let's bring back the
No,
manifesto.
so you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
the piece of paper.
Yeah.
They bullied me into making it better. A lot of noogies, swirlies, etc.
Well, you spoke a little bit just now about how personal, especially Rick Mitchell and your dad, and what, I mean, I think that I come from a place of using one's own life to create art. I think that that's like kind of all we got. What was that like, putting so much of your dad and your family in the film, and what did that mean to you, and why is it so important?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially because I love animation sort of more than any grown man should, and I'm like, I've seen all the movies, and I sometimes get frustrated, and I'm like, it's because it's just sort of like Dad A with mustache B and briefcase C, and he's like, hello, Dad, I'm a business dad. And I'm like, my dad's not like that. He's a psychopath. Last time I went home, this is a true story, he showed up with a garbage bag full of acorns, and he's like, Deb, and that's my mom's name, he's like, Deb, cook these up for me, plops them on the table, and he's like, you know, you can eat them if you cook the poison out. She's like, how do you cook the poison out? He's like, that's for you to find out. And then he sort of walks away. And I was like, this man is insane, and I need to memorialize him. And sort of like from a real standpoint, you know, that's sort of the sort of comedic hook of the man. But from a real standpoint, my dad, sort of over the course of my life, you know, all we have is our personal stories, right? And my dad, over the course of my life, started out as I was this little kid. You know, he would be like, here's how to hunt, son. And I'm like, I have my scarf in the back of the Jeep, like, Father, I have no time for hunting. Take me to the cartoonery.
You really didn't understand.
No.
Cartoon.
But over the course of like talking to him and understanding, he sort of like came to understand my love of animation and sort of came around in a really nice way, and sort of, instead of looking at him as this little extension, looking at me as this little extension of him, he's like, oh, you're your own person. And that was like a really meaningful change in him, and sort of like, instead of him looking to the past at all of, you know, the things that he did with his dad, he was like, oh, you're your own person. And then we sort of started growing together, and I thought that was really beautiful. And also, as a teenager, I was a little brat, as I'm sure many of you have, who are like, you know, why are you making my clothes, Mom? You know, but like thanks for the laundry, you're getting in the way of my video game. But sort of as I was like watching them leave me at college, I realized like all of the things that they gave up for me to be there, and I started sobbing. And I realized like, oh, they gave up so much, and I never even saw it until they're gone. You know, and sort of all, you know, all you have is these relationships with your family, and if you don't keep them, if you don't sort of work to support them, they'll, you know, die. So it was sort of about people coming together and families coming together, and it's been so gratifying to see people who are like, you know, I saw this with my dad, and now we're talking after 10 years of not talking to him or whatever. So that's been really nice.
I love that you told that story to us about how like that moment when you got dropped off at school, and that you wanted to make a movie about that feeling, that moment, and that's the moment that ends the movie, and it always makes me cry, and like you did. It's so cool.
So emotional. How's your family feel about it?
Oh, great. I mean, I do have the one and only photographic evidence of my father crying in a screening room. He's got a COVID mask on.
You did like your own jump cut of him crying.
But it was really sweet, and you know, it's funny because my dad gets all the praise, but my mom is like, I've been supporting you since the beginning. There was no conflict.
Right.
So why is he the hero?
Right. You didn't have to make a movie about her.
Yeah, exactly.
I do feel like the reaction to the film has been, I mean, I get my own amount of feedback of friends and sort of strangers online that have seen it and just really relate to a lot of different aspects of the film. And I myself really relate to Katie in all the ways, and sort of even as the years that we were making it, I was like, oh, whoa, you know, I'm on a little roller coaster ride. But what do you think it is about the film that has resonated with people so much? Like, it's funny. You cannot not cry at that moment. Like, it has all the things, and I don't know. Do you think it? I mean, you kind of answered it already, but.
Well, I think a lot of it is the specificity in the characters, especially with Katie. We were trying to make sure that, you know, she felt like a real person. Her people that we knew or worked with or went to film school or art school with, or and the more specific she got, and the more her like costuming got specific, and like, oh, that's and then the more she drew on her shoes and colored her fingernails, and
casting you was a big
Yes.
like milestone, that like, here's somebody who understands like what it's like to walk in this person's shoes and is bringing all this stuff and all of these records, and that went all whatever it was, 700, and we figured out the number, crew people.
Yeah, 688.
Yeah, crew members that like put a little bit of themselves into Katie, and on and on and on with all the characters, and what you get is a movie that's populated by, you know, specific handmade people.
you might be surprised to learn that many of the crew were artsy film nerds.
Yes.
No.
We were just as shocked as you. We were like only cool quarterbacks on this crew.
Well, talk about that, like the visual language of the film for a second, because it does have a look that is very different than most animated films, maybe anything, especially big budget studio films. Whether it is that hand-drawn look or whether you're going into Katie's filmmaking, like it has a unique and multiple different unique visual languages. Like,
Yeah.
how did that?
Well, I think that like it sort of started because, you know, the movie is about like humanity and all of our sort of like beautiful flaws and eccentricities and stuff. And if the movie looked like it was made by a computer, like, you know, rounded edges and everything's perfect, it would feel, I think, dead and not alive. And because it's about humanity, it should feel like it's drawn by a person and painted by a person. And so that so we were aiming for, in every frame, you could feel the hand of an artist. You know, so you weren't using these computers to hide people's humanities. You were using it to bring it out and make it. So that's why the character's drawing on the screen, because there's nothing more immediate than like a teenager's little doodle, you know. And it was so fun to take this like multi-million-dollar beautiful movie and just like graffiti all over it.
I will say, while I was recording, Mike was the only person in the room with me, and I was like, oh my God, he's like noting everything I'm doing. He's like making a note every time I say something, and then I realized he's just doodling.
It was all like 3D arrows.
He's like very in the know. Like, he's doodling. It's all going to be okay.
Yeah, it wasn't like just B minus.
No, but you feel that. You feel like even like it's like a meta. We're like part of the doodle, which is so cool. From the open, I love that.
Yeah, right. Like, she's making the movie, she's telling
Yeah.
you, and those doodles, all that filigree, it only works when it's telling me more about Katie and how she feels about what's going on.
Yeah.
When it was just like, oh, like we're goofing off, like
Yeah.
you wound up shaking out of the movie because it didn't bring you any closer to her, and that was really important to us. Every time we do that, it has to bring you closer to Katie.
And
Yeah.
we were lucky to be making this at Sony because you know, we had sort of broken all of the pipelines to make Spider-Verse and to make that look like you were inside of a comic book, and inherited the crew onto this, and nobody wanted to go back to the way they were doing it before. They wanted to break it again in a new way.
Yeah.
And because that's the great thing about animation, is that anything is possible. The limit is really your imagination. However you want it to look, you can make it look that way, you know, with enough R&D and time and energy and really, really smart people who know how to make computers be like humans. But
But
you
a
know,
lot of times, like, you know, there's like an institutional look
yeah,
at
house
the
style or
place,
whatever.
you know, or there's like a tradition that for some reason we're trying to uphold. And our big thing about the movie is like, we don't want to look backwards. We don't want to look to Spider-Verse or anything we made before. We don't want to fall into some sort of like like preconceived idea of what an animated feature looks and feels like. We want to look forwards. We want to make a movie that is relevant to right now. And
so then we talked to Mike, and he told us about his theory about humanity and the hand of the artist, and then he showed us the Instagram page of this woman, Lindsay Olivares, who had been doing some character designs, and he said, I want it to look like these like watercolor illustrations that she does on her Instagram page.
so we need to hire some production designer who can imitate this style. And we were like, well, what if you hired the woman who is doing the style? Like, but she's not experienced. So like, we have lots of experience in this building. What we don't have is anyone who could draw like that.
Yeah.
You know,
which is incredible, like that this is your first feature animated film, Lindsay's first time being production designer, and a couple other
and story Guillermo Martinez, that's his first movie in that role.
Yeah.
But a lot, again, all of these people are coming in with really fun, big, strong ideas, and Lindsay came out swinging, and it was her. She's the one who like figured out how to make that Katie Vision doodle stuff work. She just took some footage home over the weekend and made a little animated GIF basically, and we're like, what if it looked like this? And we were like, yes, that's amazing.
Do you find having worked with a lot of experienced people in these department heads that you're coming in with sort of people that this is their shot, and they're everyone's trying to break the mold, they're hungry in a new way at being given this new opportunity? Do you feel like across the board it was like, you felt that, the difference?
I mean, it obviously can go horribly wrong.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's like that's a different panel.
Right?
Yeah.
But in this particular case, all of the people who were first timing it really were not going to throw away their shot, as they say. And they really did like try to do something new and special and original and fun, and it was our job to sort of encourage them and to try and say like, you can go even farther, don't be afraid. You can do it.
Well, and it's also a real testament to Sony too, because in a lot of places, if you're like, we want the movie to look like this, they would be like, no, leave, get out. Or it's like, we want a queer main character, like, not allowed. People have to have uncomfortable conversations in the car. We can't have that. You know, so it was really nice that Sony sort of it encouraged that and sort of let a bunch of children make a movie, sort of shepherded by our 10-year-old. Time travel versions of ourselves.
But I mean, one of the things that has been interesting, like running around and talking to nice people about the movie, a lot of people ask us like, how did you convince them to let you do that? You know, so because a lot of folks, it really is a credit to Sony that like a lot of folks at other places are like, we don't think we could get away with that.
Yeah.
How did you get permission? And the answer is really like, we just did it.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like,
Just
you know,
did it and stuck it in the movie.
and there were lots and lots of people like supporting this Mike's vision and Lindsay and on, but every once in a while someone would be like, we were like, wow, well, what if she had like a puppet and she was doing this, and like, oh my God, do you know how long it's gonna take to model a puppet and texture it to look like a thing? Oh no, I did it over the weekend. I made a puppet, it's got sporks for hands, I shot it on my phone against a crummy green screen, and here it is, just put it in.
And they're like, damn it, fine. No, they were happy.
No, we were thrilled.
No one was mad.
And one of the, like, there were a lot of technical things that went into making this movie look like this. We had to, the computer thinks everything is math, so we had to explain to the computer, like, no, this isn't light, this is like watercolor brushes, right? You have to rethink, like, how that, and then we also
They had to write all this programming that was like, no one had ever done
Dear
before.
computer. But there's also like a cultural element, which is like the crew, right, needs to think of themselves as film students again, and needs to go, the answer is always yes, right? And I gotta find a way, and how would I do this if I was 15?
Yeah, right. I mean, and that spirit was, and much credit to Mike for being like a cheerleader and encouraging people to try stuff and making everybody feel like their own filmmaker. But even many of the very experienced crew, like our head of animation, Alan Hawkins, who's been doing this for a long, long time, was excited by the challenge of wanting to do something new. And so he went home over a weekend and was like, we have to animate these stealth bots, the big scary robots, And he was like, I
Blake
don't want them
Griffin
to
robot.
Right, exactly. I was like, I don't want them to move around like this, that'll be dumb. And so he built this tool that allowed you to take the model and slice it into little pieces, and then move around the little pieces and then reform it onto the model. And then he did a couple of tests of how you could use it and showed it to us, and we're like, that's amazing. And then he showed the animation team how to use the tool, and then they used it in ways that he wasn't even imagining. And things like that were happening all the time on this movie because people felt empowered, and they felt like if they were doing something that was in the direction that Mike wanted to go, that he would celebrate it and put it in the movie. And then you've got, 688 people combining forces for a bunch of cool ideas.
Yeah.
Right.
Instead of going like, I have the vision and it is only me.
Well, then the math of it is you're not replicating what like Mike said,
Yes.
right?
It's like the spirit.
Right? Instead, you're saying like this is
the target.
Right, and here's like a tool that you can use in infinite ways, and now now it becomes exponential. So now you're like leveraging this thing, and suddenly you get a way more human potential into the movie.
Yeah.
So inspiring. I'm like, what am I gonna do in my weekend? You know what I mean?
People
It
also
sounds
work
like
during
everyone
the
was
week.
Like, all right, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and also like I feel like at my best, I was sort of like Jordan Peele in that Gremlins skit where it's like, it's in the movie, put that in the movie, it's great. And it was like that's like the most fun thing to do because I've worked in animated movies before and people are like so beaten down, and they're like, well, this will never get in the movie, and it's like, what if it did? What if it's on a giant screen in front of everybody and your name's at the end and they're like, well, that sounds pretty good. And it's sort of as a artist, it's more fun, and also sort of as a a dark person who just wants your movie to be good, it also makes everyone work harder.
I know you guys are all curious. This cast is just, I mean, just vocally, just clearly extremely attractive and charismatic, and I could go on, but no, not me specifically. But tell me about the voice cast. How, like, Maya Rudolph, Danny McBride, Eric Andre, Olivia Colman, Beck Bennett, like Mike. What is that like?
Great actors, you and Olivia Colman.
The through line is everyone is a creator, right? There's so many, like every voice performance is somebody who also writes or directs, sings. So you're getting all of that like talent to sort of leech onto the screen.
Yeah, and sort of in the same way we sort of tried to not sand off the edges in terms of the art, we were also sort of not sanding off the edges in terms of vocal performances and stuff. We're like, what weird thing can you throw out there, Beck Bennett? And he would like throw you 800 insane options, and like a bunch went in the movie because they were hilarious and way better than what I could write. So and that was really wonderful, and all these like stammers and the things that normally get shaven out, we were trying to include because all of that makes the movie feel more human and alive.
I remember when you were like, we were in a record session early on, and you were like, we gotta move, because I gotta get through the whole movie in this like 4-hour session. And Chris and I were like, no, who told you that? They're lying to you. You could throw this whole thing away. It's fine, and they'll come back and it'll be fine. This is the cheapest part of the whole process. So, knock yourself out, make some mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, when you have people like Abbi Jacobson.
That's it. The great Abbi Jacobson.
Well, you want to
Yes, please.
You want to get to it. We had a philosophy with with casting is that like, is this someone that can bring something to the table with this character, like, and everybody, Maya knows what it's like to be a mom and try to like put on a show and keep everybody happy. And Danny McBride often plays big jerks, but in reality, he is a sweet man who is a father and a really loving dad. You are a filmmaker.
That's art school.
And Olivia Colman is the greatest living actor, so she could do anything.
Olivia Colman plays like it's just, it's so perfect. She plays a face. Like, not even a, it's so good.
You know, and Eric Andre, and it goes on and on, but everybody was able to sort of tap into the character and add a bunch of stuff and just make it richer and better, and were great resources as to what felt right and what didn't.
Right, and the operating question is creativity a liability, or is it the engine that drives the entire process?
Yeah.
Right, and you know, not on this movie, but there's other things I've worked on where like the line producers were like, that's the problem.
Yeah.
I remember we were on a movie where somebody said, why did you invite all of these like writers to the table read? Don't you know they're all gonna have ideas? Like, that's the point.
The producers were booing ideas.
So like, yeah, so we wanted every crew member and every cast member to be sentient because that's what makes it special.
Yeah.
I don't think this is not really a question, just a thing that I experienced when playing this role, and we had conversations about this, but it was, you know, I don't even know when I started this, a couple years.
Years ago, yeah.
But in the beginning, I just, you know, we had talked about Katie being queer like so far into it, and I always kind of thought she was.
Yeah.
And it might just be because I'm queer, so that's my default, which like it should be more often. But I love so much, and I've gotten so much feedback about this film and about this character in particular that it's not about that at all. There is major conflict between Katie and her dad, and it has nothing to do with the fact that she's queer.
Yeah.
And that is such like, why is that a rarity? Like there's other things going on in their lives that are causing a fracture. And it's so refreshing. It's so refreshing for it to be, listen, I think tons of adults are watching this and hopefully loving this just like I did, but it is also a thing that kids are watching, like that needs to be in their viewing habit, that needs to just like be out there more and represented. And I feel very proud of that part of the film, and so thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
But I didn't really do it. You guys did that. So truly, like it makes a really big difference.
Well, and that was so much of that was just working with the crew, who was sort of like, we asked, you know, they were like, is Katie gay? They sort of like had the same thing you did, like, is Katie gay, right? And then we're like, is that okay? And they're like, yeah, what? Well, why wouldn't it be? And it's like, okay, great. You know, and then so we worked with them, and you know, I remember one of our artists, Lizzie Nichols, who's wonderful and wrote this like beautiful letter, that sort of summed it all up and sort of, you know, made everyone not nervous about it. But the thing that sort of she said was, she's like, if I was a little girl watching this, maybe I would have felt less alone. And I was like, you know, like we all started crying. And it was like, well, we have to do it now, you know, because it's like the movie, you know, you're trying to make this movie be filled with value to people, you know, and if it could do that, oh my God, you know, like that would be amazing.
I think it is. It's no longer.
It would be good to have that.
Yeah, no, we get a lot. Also, people, you know, parents at my kids' school, or just random people that I come across who are like, this meant so much to my daughter, and that sort of thing. And every time it gets me all choked up, that like it meant something to someone. So you know, you make these things. They're a message in a bottle, and you hope that someone will connect with it. And the way that this movie has connected with a lot of people in a lot of different ways has been really special.
I'm gonna ask one more question, then we're gonna turn to you guys. But the last question I had is, I'm working on something right now, and I'm working on scoring something, and it is really tricky and tough. You guys have worked with Mike Mothersbaugh for
Yeah.
Mike.
It's Mark. It's okay. Listen, you're doing great.
It's actually
so close, right? I even said that's the last question, and it's like it had to Mark.
Right on
Yeah.
the mark.
Mark.
You can pronounce it either way. Mike.
Mike.
It's your Australian accent version.
Yeah.
Mike Mothersbaugh.
Mark.
Mothersbaugh.
Yeah, all right, Mark Mothersbaugh. So you guys have collaborated many times with him.
It's true.
It's, you know, you use needle drops, but scoring something and bringing out the emotion and the action, all that. What was that like on this? Why continually go back to him? Like, what is that collaboration, and how do you feel like it like elevates every project?
Well, one great thing about Mark is that, you know, he, you know, with Devo was like a songwriter, so he's really great at melody in a way that I think that, you know, is a part of scoring that's getting.
It's fallen out of fashion,
yeah,
right?
But a good thematic melody is really powerful when done right. And he has a great sense of humor. He's the weirdest, driest guy. You're never quite sure if he's joking or not, and he almost always is. And he, you know, one of his like signature things is like pairing analog music with like traditional instruments with computery beeps and boops and weird synthesizers and moogs, or moogs as they're pronounced lawyerly, and all that type of stuff. And so he was a perfect person to do a movie that was about, you know, this conflict between humanity and computers, and I think it's some of his best work.
And one of the things I really love about his score is that some of the most emotional moments and most humane are with electronics. Like the movie, like that stuff in the first reel, like it's these synthesized human voices.
Yeah.
And that we like these nice people in Australia like recorded their version of it, and it wasn't the same. There was something about like the computer, the synthesizer attempting to be human.
That feels really right.
Right? It's just like, oh yeah, this is so aspirational, and something about it just hits you the right way.
Well, and because it's, you know, it's like the, you know, the theme of the movie is about people learning to, you know, use technology to connect with each other and reveal humanity. The art style is doing that, and the music is doing that, where it's like those two things are coming together. So I think it all hopefully feels of a piece. And the other thing about Mark that's amazing is he got COVID, and he scored the movie on a laptop looking at people in Sydney, and he's like, the flutes are too loud.
From the
I'm
hospital.
so tired. From the hospital.
He was on a ventilator in the hospital. It was pre-vaccines. He was one of the first people.
He had a real like touch and go experience right after that, and we finished, you know, the movie while he was recovering. But it was like really, but we had like, so we're like scoring the movie. We're also having like a prayer circle, like at like 9 on the 9s. We had to say a prayer.
Yeah. Well, on a laptop,
prayer. Yeah.
they're like, we're watching them score the movie, and he's like, "This violins are too loud." So it's like he crawled through to record this.
Now he's fit as a fiddle.
Yeah, now he's doing wonderful.
That's great. All right. Well, why don't we open it up to some audience questions? Yeah.
All of you were talking about who you identify with, and mainly it comes down to different family members. Can you hear me or should I?
Yeah, no, you're great.
Okay, great. Is it psychopathic to be the one that identifies with the system, the PAL system?
No.
Place, because your animators managed to capture. I mean, she's working. Her feelings are she's working 24/7, realizing everybody's wishes and desires and doing whatever they want for them. And the lines are your animators capture how she's constantly started and expanded and minimized, and then it's like play Taylor Swift, order nachos. Do you get any feedback from people that identify with this?
From Siri.
Yes. So the question for people in the back that didn't hear is it psychopathic to identify with Pal, feeling abandoned and overworked and underappreciated? And
Absolutely not.
It is not psychopathic because, and that figuring out a way to tell that story in a way you want even to be able to empathize with your villain if you're doing it right. And we had a lot of different versions of that story about why Pal was doing what it was doing. And when we landed on this idea of Pal feeling abandoned and feeling underappreciated, really made it connect thematically with the feeling that Rick was having of feeling abandoned by his daughter, and once it was sort of like there's sort of two sides of the same argument, it became relevant to that story, and then the whole movie got better because it was telling one thematic idea, and I think I feel really bad when she gets tossed into the trash, and I get it, maybe don't send everybody into space or whatever, but certainly feeling bitter about it, I get.
Well, her and Rick both feel obsolete.
Right.
And also there was a coda that we cut out where she's there's like dramatic music rising, and then you see a sort of a cup with rice, uncooked rice in it. Like, dun 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 dun, and then she's dropped it. So maybe that's what the sequel will be. Who knows?
Yeah.
At the risk of popping this beautiful love bubble in the room right now, I'm curious to know, because this deals with like taking the grid down and AI taking over and whatnot, like for each of you, which character do you think humanity should follow for the best chances of survival? Is it slicing and dicing?
Like, who should lead us?
Who should lead us?
From the cast. I mean, obviously Manchi.
I mean, the message of the movie is that any one of them would have failed, but together, together,
Yeah.
humanity is all right. Obviously having Rick's, survival skills could come in handy, and if the grid goes down. But I do think that, as Mike mentioned, the movie starts with Rick looking backwards at his old home movies, and then ends with him looking forward into like a new relationship with his daughter, and he's the one that had to sort of grow the most. And there's a reason why the movie ends with a Zoom call, because technology is not bad. It's a tool, and you can use it poorly, or you can use it well, and you can use it to connect to other people. You can use it for creativity, and you can use it. We used it to make this movie. So it's pretty good.
A computer's a tool, and so is a paintbrush.
Right.
It's just math. It's like a great way to amplify like what your wrist does.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I don't know. I think a creative person who can, come up with new solutions and disrupt
Pretty useful.
Yeah.
the status quo, I think is pretty valuable.
Yeah. Katie.
Yes, I think so.
Anyone else?
Anyone else?
You guys spoke earlier on how you were actively seeking actors that related to the characters that they were being cast in. Maya Rudolph being a loving mother, same with Danny McBride being a sweet father. Did you do the same with the casting of Katie and seeking out openly queer actresses, and is that how Abbi sort of came into the picture? And if so, how did Abbi, and I guess this is more of a question for you, Abbi, but how did your background in being here help inform your character on TV?
We just wanted a great performer and actor and brain and heart. That's where that came from. That's where, Abby was top of the list.
Yeah, no, totally. And I'm like the world's biggest Broad City fan. It's on my TV Mount Rushmore. And I was just like, we interviewed her, and like Bingo Bronson was in the background, and I'm like,
Oh
Bingo
my God,
Bronson! And that element of it, at least on our side, sort of developed really organically and slowly, sort of like, and when by the time Abbi came on, we were sort of thinking about it, but we hadn't committed to it, and I think sort of like we were trying to figure it out as we were going, and it was really nice to have sort of Abbi to bounce stuff off of, sort of towards the end and be like, does this feel okay, and does this feel right? And she would, like, I remember there's a couple times where you're like, I wouldn't say that, maybe keep that out of there, and it was really nice because it's like, we want that kind of feedback.
I think it wasn't like keep it out, it was more like, I don't know if you need to.
Right. Yeah.
Or it was more like that.
You helped us a lot, you gave us confidence, this idea that like, it's no big whoop. It's like, her hair is kind of red, she likes girls, she draws on her shoes, like that's whatever. And so the movie had to obey that, right? The movie had to not be like, you never want to be the first person to tell a kid like that they might have a problem with their parents because of who they love. that would stink, right? So it forced us into what is unfortunately an unusual choice. But it made us think harder about it and do a better job.
Yeah, and for me, I was speaking about it a little bit earlier, but I guess I think when I came on, there was, I don't know, like there was some Jade stuff, but it was like not as heavy, and she was wearing a pin, and I was just like, I relate to her, I think she's queer. You know, like I'm like just, you know, I relate to so much else about her. Like I went to art school, I didn't go to film school specifically, but drawing was my thing for a very long time before I got into all this. So I just very much related to the story and the just like going to college. That just felt that time for me, and leaving home and feeling like I'm finally finding my people in that way. Even though this film is so about already kind of realizing you have your people. But then we had a bigger conversation, and that's when I was like, I thought she was already. Because it unfortunately is a thing that, you know, they didn't, I don't believe you got a ton of pushback, but it is still a lot of conversations you have to have with putting out a film that's gonna be this big with a studio. And I mean, it's the first film with first animated film for, what you say?
For all audiences with a queer protagonist.
Yeah, which is wild, but it's the first, so I'm assuming there were just like a lot of conversations, and like
Again, we just had to do it.
Yeah.
At a certain point, you have to stop going like, all right, well, let's pitch how it's gonna. Instead, we just were like, you know what? Here are the scenes. We'll put them in the edit. Like, let's animate the good ones. And
you're
we can
really
fight about
nervous,
it later if you want.
I'm really nervous you're gonna have to be the one that takes it out, and nobody wants to be the person that takes it out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is so, I'm gonna try and say this the right way too. So I felt very similar to the crew member who wrote that letter, even though for me it would have been like, I came into my queerness very late in life. So if I had seen a film like that, who knows how I would have been influenced, or influenced to like see myself, not whatever. But yeah, but also, I think it's just as important for young straight kids to watch a young queer kid and relate in all the other ways. And it's not a thing. Like, it's just as important for all kids to see that story. All right, so it was a rocky. That was a rocky one.
It was great. But the way it shook out, you know, where we're really, like, this isn't headcanon, right? That she's gay. It's like, we say it. And it was really important for us to do that and to do it really explicitly. But the way it shook out, like, we say it at the end. What was kind of interesting is, like, you spend the whole movie just relating to this person and, like, watching her story and, like, rooting for her to beat the bad guys and, like, reunite with everybody and, like, make friends and so who cares?
Yeah.
Mike, really loved your use of cinema tools in this film, of like slow motion, freeze frame, depth of field that you kind of rarely see in a lot of animation today. Can you talk about how that kind of evolved over the time of this film?
Yeah, I mean, we're just big nerds. So like in the script, it's like an Inaritu style tracking shot, you know, and we're like typing, we're like, this is gonna be so cool, you know, like depth of field, really, you know, yeah, exactly. I'm like, Scar, I'm like, Father, bring me the Dogma 95 manifesto. But no, and so all that stuff, you know, we just get really inspired and excited. You know, all of the people on the movie are these like film lovers. So, you know, we just get excited about other movies and like, what if we can do this? And we really think of it like cinema, even though it's, you know, it's sort of, it can sometimes be embarrassing, you know, to say that. But we did really think of it that way, and we tried to make it, you know, as I had 5 pictures of some of our favorite filmmakers on the wall, and it said like, don't F this up, make a movie we'd respect. So, and we were trying to make it so if you know, Miyazaki sees it, he'll be like, this is a work of I respect.
And a lot of people sometimes think that animation is a genre, you know, that is like follows a certain pattern or a formula, and yeah, we understand it's like a musical or something, right? And it's not. It's a medium, and the medium is film. And so I can't think of, you know, the people that we work with on these movies, like they are all filmmakers, and I can't think of anything more cinematic than an animated movie where you're drawing every frame. And so, yeah, we work really hard to make each shot mean something and say something, and we worry about whose eyes are higher than, you know, the other characters in every darn frame.
Yeah. No, and we would have these like conversations about like mise en scène, you know, while we're sort of storyboarding and stuff, and because, you know, we're all sort of we all wanted to try to elevate things as much as we could, because, you know, it was our first movie, so we're like, this might be our only shot to ever make one of these things.
Right.
And there's a giant Furby.
And there's right. That's.
I think that's how we should end it.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abbi.
Thank you guys.
Thank you to the Rosses and all of you guys for coming.
Thank you.